What's up, hockey people, YouTubers, Fanduel, Draftkings, fanatics, and aficionados? It's your buddy Choppadong, and I'm coming at you with a little bit different angle today. Hockey people, basketball people, you're both going to like this, whether you play hockey or not, because my wheelhouse as a coach and contributor to DFSArmy.com tends to be more of a teaching role, more of a coaching role. My goal is to get you to become a better player, and I got a good idea to do this. I love running experiments and checking theory A versus theory B. And so I think this ongoing series is going to get fun here in the short term because I had an idea presented to me today by one of our coaches here, Flynn. He said, "Here's a hybrid. What do you think?" And when I blew it up and looked at it, I was like, okay, value, 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 good underpriced cash type lineup. Where's the correlation? You don't have any correlation in here. I don't think this lineup's going to hit 180 points very often. I don't think it's a hybrid lineup. What's a hybrid? It's between a cash lineup and a GPP lineup. I think this one's a straight up cash lineup. So what I told him was it's interesting. There's no correlation to speak of. I'd be interested to see how often this lineup hits 180 versus a stacked lineup. And then within a minute, bam, my light bulb went on. I said, that's an experiment idea. Why don't I take one non-stacked lineup, one stacked lineup on every main slate, pretty much until the playoff picture gets real serious in hockey? Because, then it really starts screwing things up again, and then the slates get no fun towards the end of the year. But for the next couple of months, why not run one lineup each on each slate, put a buck on it or something, and run the non-stacked lineup in a 50-50, because we all know you're not supposed to really stack in cash, and then put the stacked lineup in a single entry GPP. And we'll just track it on paper. We'll see which one hits 180 more often. We'll see if the non-stacked one. Why not? Because if the non-stacked lineup is just as successful as the stacked lineup, then we can put this theory to bed forever. But we know everything we've ever read, everything we've ever studied, everything that makes sense in our head says that the correlation is so tight in baseball, hockey, even football, that you want to parlay those points together and boost your upside when you are correct. You're going to take a non-stacked lineup, take a one off from here, one off from there, one off from here, one off from there, maybe a twofer, here or there in the really, really chalky type offenses on the night because they're in the best spots, and hope for the best. Try and minimize your risk. But in a GPP, you're going to go balls to the wall. And in a single entry GPP, you're going to go contrarian at that and really try to push it over the edge. So why don't we do that? Why don't we run a little experiment back and forth? If you like, today would be the day. If you like that type of concept and you want to learn like that, why don't you hit the like and the subscribe button down at the bottom, ring the notification bell, and tell me that this is what you want to see, stuff like this, because when stuff like this comes into my head, it has to come out of my mouth or it has to come out on paper. That's just how I am. I enjoy sharing this type of stuff with you. So if you enjoy having it shared with you, you got to feed the beast. You got to let me know. That's where it becomes important. Spread me out on Twitter, spread me through YouTube, whatever the case is. Comment, I'll probably comment back. I want to see if this is something that you guys really want to do, because the normal grain breaks are fine, and that's what we'll get into in identifying these. We're going to identify it from two different angles. We're going to look for GPP stuff, and we're going to look for cash stuff. We're going to talk a little bit of both as we go through there, and then we'll go picking through some player pools and see if we can't find something. So basically, let's dive in and let's kick this party off. I will take the non-stack lineup and put it in a 50-50, and the stack lineup and put it in a GPP, and I'll show you the results tomorrow. Win or lose. When I look at the first game on the slate tonight, I look at Colorado, and I see Colorado has not been scoring a lot lately. That's not great. They've been giving up a lot of goals lately. I still like Carl Soderberg all the time. This is the kind of situation I can get off of that top line of McKinnon, Rantanen, Landeskog, whatever, because they're highly priced. If Soderberg is still producing, for his salary, I love him. I still love him. He's a pretty consistent guy. Over here on the Washington side, they're giving up goals, which does bode well for Colorado to get something going. So it wouldn't be the worst GPP option, but there's not a lot of cash stuff to love over here right now, in my opinion. On the Washington side of things, they're not really scoring either. So even though Colorado's given a ton up, it's more of a GPP type of scenario. That'd be okay. You want to run your Ovechkins or whatever? Fine. I would prefer an Oshie for cash and then just stack it if you want to run a GPP scenario over there, because it could turn out. So you can see right now with TJ Oshie, I called this up off of LineStar app, and the reason I do that, I will pay for other subscriptions to other sites because I like the way they display a lot of their stats and a lot of their stuff. I use all of these together to help bring you guys information and do my research to help cut your time down. But looking at Oshie, a little bit more consistent. See the blue points here are fairly flat. There's not a lot of up and down to them. It's hockey. There are some single digit stuff. But at the 6,200, you're going to want around 13 points. And there's a 22, a 2, an 8, a 17, a 3, a 19. Starting at that 3, it was about his last bad game outside of one game, one other 3. You get a 19, a 38, 21, 13, and a 17, and then a 3. So 5 out of his last 6 games have been very cash viable, and that's typically what you get out of a TJ Oshie. Okay? When he's playing fairly well, it's okay. Now, and it says right here he's on the top line with Ovechkin and Backstrom, if that is true. If we look at Ovechkin instead, you can see consistent, yes, but for this price, no. You need about 17 points out of him at that price. So the 11 and the 15 are not value. They don't necessarily kill you, but they're not great. You're hunting the 57 with Ovechkin. 34 is okay. You're hunting the 57. Doesn't come along too often. He's a slate breaker when it happens, but you're getting a lot more 3s, 6s, 5s, 14s, 11s than you are 30s and whatever to balance that out. He's not a cash viable player typically. He was for a couple of months this year. It was great, but he's not right now. He's back to his normal self of kind of a little bit boom or bust. And at this price, you cannot have the dud. You can't have the 6. You can't have the 3. That doesn't help you in a cash game. So it's not a smart play. When I look back at where we kind of stand there, those are just a couple of ideas of where I'm looking for, cash versus GPP, the types of players that I'm looking for, and how I go about kind of confirming if what I'm thinking is true. So that top game, GPP game, Pittsburgh, not scoring a ton, but giving them up. Florida, not scoring a ton, not really giving them up. So Pittsburgh's not in a smash spot because Florida's not giving up a ton of goals. Florida's in a better spot because Pittsburgh is giving them up, and they're at home. So I like the Vetranos, the Dadonovs, Barkovs. I might take one of those guys for cash. 6.5 over under. Vegas likes the game. It loves the Pittsburgh side of things, which I don't know. I'm not. No, would it surprise me if they blew up for 6? No, they can. But I just don't see it just yet. So this is another tournament type of game for me. You could take somebody. I wouldn't take a Crosby or a Malkin. Right now, they're overpriced for their production. They're not producing right now. You'd be looking more to Letang or a Schultz, maybe a Gensel, somebody like that would be where you would be looking for cash type games. When I'm looking over here at Florida, Vetrano for sure, Barkov, Dadonov maybe safe. It's about it. The Kings game here is crap, although they are maybe on the uptick. They're gaining some momentum, and Philadelphia is not giving up goals right now. The play of Carter Hart has been great. Stolarz tonight is going to be a very chalky goalie. I have a feeling he's very, very cheap at like 7,000 on Fanduel, which tells me he's going to be very, very popular because for cash or GPP, you can do a lot of good around him with the minus 175 favorite and the low over-under total of a 5.5. Does that mean that the Kings are in play for tournaments? Maybe your biggest tournaments, like your quarter arcades and stuff like that, maybe, because if the scenario does happen and Stolarz ends up very, very chalky, nobody's going to be on the Kings, of course. They probably shouldn't be, but they're not going to be. And then on top of that, you double dip. Stolarz blows up at the expense of your skaters. So that's a good thing. It's a very, very big GPP thing. And on a 14-game slate, ownership should still be spread out pretty good. I don't see Stolarz at like 50, 60% ownership. And so the leverage is a little bit minimized, which is why you're going to save it for great, great big tournaments. Over here, you can't forget a Kovacek, Drew Doughty type. But I'm not real high on him, especially if I'm running Stolarz. I could, because it's not going to hurt me too bad. Stolarz gives up 1 goal, he loses 4 points. If Kovacek scores the goal, he gets me 12, right? So it's a net gain of 8. It's still fine. People over-exaggerate the bat against the starting pitcher is different in baseball, but the skater against the goalie, they over-exaggerate that a little bit. It's not quite the killer you'd think it is, that it makes sense to be the way we've been taught. Over on the Philly side, Konechny types would be good for cash games, undervalue types. Giroux and Couturier, Voracek types are a little bit pricey, but if they're bringing value, go for it. Carolina, Buffalo. Carolina scoring goals, Buffalo giving them up. Bang. There's your tournament stack tonight. One of. Go find out the producers inside Carolina. Look maybe towards the second line, but Aho's always there, cash game kind of guy. He would be who I'd be looking for. Maybe pair a second line or 2 second line guys with him if they're on the top power play unit with him. That'd be outstanding. I don't know if that's the case. I'll have to double check that myself. Buffalo not scoring a ton. Carolina not giving up a ton. Not a big Buffalo fan. tonight, but Carolina is one offense I'll be looking at in tournaments in my stacked lineup. New York Islanders, New Jersey Devils, kind of puke an elite defense versus and giving up some. But when they're not scoring a ton and they're giving up, it doesn't help much. Doesn't mean they can't blow up. It means that one off maybe for a cash type of situation, but I don't even like the game that much. Certainly not over here. I don't like the game much over here. So I'm largely just going to pass that one up. Watch it go for 6-5 or 7-5, some kind of shootout scenario, just to shove karma up my ass. That's just how that rolls. Winnipeg Jets, powerful offense as we know. Not doing much on the road lately. Bear that in mind. But it's not like Montreal's given up a ton of goals anyway. When you look at Montreal, they're not scoring a ton. It's not like Winnipeg's given up a ton. So this 6 looks like it's high. The 114, 103 looks about right. The 3 and the 2, it just feels kind of high. It feels kind of overvalued by Vegas tonight. People are going to like the Jets. Canadians are having a pretty good year. So Canadians, So they're having a pretty good year, which means people are going to be flocking to them. They're going to garner a little bit of ownership tonight. And I think this game might slip to the under. If I was to play it, I would game stack it. And here's why. If you're going to have a tournament theory, it needs to make sense. Like the LA versus the chalk goalie, that's okay. On a slate the size of tonight, I'd probably say probably not necessary. If you wanted to run the Buffalo Sabres against the Carolina Hurricanes, I'd be like, why? It doesn't make any sense. If you're going to run a GPP narrative, it needs to make sense. And here's the narrative in this game that makes sense. Against each other, 2 years versus opponent, 4 goals for and 4.25 against. That is a shootout. Same over here. That is an absolute shootout. Big time. Something about this matchup leads to high-scoring games. Maybe the roster's changed in the past year or two. I don't know. But for 2 years, over 4 games, small sample size, but over 4 games, these games have gone 5-3, 4-4, 6-4, whatever. And you've gotten some good fantasy production out of both sides of this game when it occurs. So for a GPP, you can write down, I wrote it down on a piece of paper with a big GS next to it for game stack. That's one area I would go. Winnipeg might be a little bit popular for whatever reason. I don't know that Montreal is going to, and certainly both of them together, maybe not. On a 14-game slate, people are going to be too tempted to go elsewhere. And so there may be some ownership in Winnipeg. There may be some ownership in Montreal, but there isn't going to be a lot of ownership of both of them in the same lineup, if that makes sense. That's where you get a unique lineup. St. Louis and Tampa Bay. St. Louis is up on the uptick, doing pretty well the last 15 games or so. Scoring better than they were early in the year, not giving up any goals right now, hardly at all. That puts Bennington, not Jake Allen, but Bennington in a good spot tonight. Vasilevsky's very, very expensive. And if you look at the goals against, not great. So I'm not expecting a super high game. This one is another one that I would probably put kind of leaning towards the under. But Tampa Bay has not been scoring over the last 10 games, but their last 10 home games, they have been. And they're at home tonight. St. Louis might be in some trouble. This is one of those scenarios where I think Tampa Bay is going to be popular. Top team in the league, points-wise, real-life team in the league. Good fantasy team to bank on. Couple of different lines. Very, very deep production on this team. And St. Louis, I think people are going to be thinking, they're kind of crappy team. They're not going to realize they've turned the corner the past, say, 3 weeks to 5 weeks. And they're actually better than they were the first 2 months of the season when they were establishing their reputation as, I was saying it myself, stack against them, and they're my team. But they have turned the corner. So now what? I think this is a great spot to fade Tampa Bay. Because why? Tampa Bay might disappoint. If St. Louis's defense is truly elite and they have a good game tonight, then, and you hear a lot of if, but that's a GPP conversation. If Tampa Bay comes out flat and St. Louis has a great defensive game, then a lot of people are going to get hurt. And I would rather be in other offenses than hopefully catching one of those correctly. Because if I catch one of those correctly and everybody falls flat in this one, I'm golden, man. And so I think it is worth the gamble to fade this offense and pick up the other. Now, can Tampa Bay score 6 or 7 tonight? Sure. St. Louis is prone to blowing up. They did it all freaking November. But it seems like they've turned a corner since the coaching changed to Berube. And it seems like they're playing pretty damn good team defense. If you were going to put somebody over here, I'd be looking at a Ryan O'Reilly, maybe a third liner like a Sundqvist, or Robert Thomas if he's back, some cheap guy like that. Not a bad cash punt. Not a bad fill your roster punt with a GPP type thing and then stack somewhere else. If you ended up over here with Tampa Bay, I just think you're going to wind up disappointed more times than not. I'm not saying they can't do it. I'm saying that with everybody already there, I think I'm going to bank on the disappointment tonight. Because if nobody was going to be there, then I'd bank on maybe them actually blowing up St. Louis. But because I think a lot of people are going to be on Tampa Bay, it's easy for me to fade them. Anaheim, crap and crap. Giving up a lot of goals, not scoring anything, puts Ottawa in a pretty good position, but Ottawa's not exactly scoring right now either. Not a great game, but I will be looking at Ottawa for value. I won't be looking at anything on the Ducks side. Golden Knights, same type of scenario. Not giving up a ton of goals, but they're not scoring either. And Detroit's not doing either one really either. So I might look for a Theodore, somebody running hot. Dylan Larkin, somebody running hot as a one-off and treat them for a cash game. I'm not going to be stacking this game in GPPs. Edmonton, interesting. Not scoring a lot, but giving up a lot. Puts Minnesota in a good spot. Minnesota can't score for nothing right now. They're giving up decent goals. So that puts Edmonton in an okay spot, tourney spot, a little bit of a long shot type of spot. Your Connor McDavid's always good for cash. Draisaitl, Clefbaum, these types of guys are always there. Darnell Nurse, whatever, are usually in pretty good spots. Minnesota is kind of showed signs of heating up a little bit lately. With Koivu being down, maybe they rally the troops. I don't know. Your Zuckers, Granlunds, whatever. Maybe some of these guys are starting to produce. Spurgeon for sure are guys that are maybe starting to produce. I'd look at them as one-offs. I don't know that I would stack this game. There is one play over on the Edmonton side that I should actually tell you about because it is very, very, very solid based on offense and defense matchups and all that kind of. But I'm not going to tell you that. I'm not going to tell you that. That's not public information. We talked about it in our VIP forums already today. So that's why you got to come inside dfsarmy.com, use that coupon code CHOP if you want the real secrets. If you want to know why our Army hats are on top of the leaderboards, and you want to know why we're actually making people better players, you need to come inside for that information. I ain't giving it out here. I already wrote it down on my piece of paper. I'm not going to tell you what letter it starts with because I think that'd probably give it away. So let's move on. Dallas, yuck. No goals against, no goals for. Blah, blah, blah. Nashville, not a great offensive team, not a bad defensive team. So this game's just kind of a borderline wash and just kind of a putrid game. That'll probably be the game goes 7-5 as well tonight and makes me look like the fool. Vancouver, nothing. Chicago scoring like mad. This is not great, but it's not like the worst. This is very, very good for Chicago. This is very, very good for Vancouver. But Vancouver's not scoring a ton either, especially the last 10 road games. So I don't have a lot of confidence in Vancouver other than maybe a one-off type of situation. I do have a decent amount of confidence in Chicago. So what I would do for Chicago, I wrote them down as a game stack type of scenario. If I was going to run Vancouver in tournaments, I would run them with Chicago. I wouldn't run them with Montreal or with Winnipeg or something. But with Chicago, I would run them on my own. I would run them with a Winnipeg, or I would run Chicago with a Washington or something like that. I think they're a standalone offense. I think Vancouver needs this game to blow up in their favor. I think Chicago's just running too hot right now. And I would be focused on Chicago. Definitely one-off territories for cash, but I'd be focused on the power play one. Your Kane, Taves, DeBrincat, Strome, either whoever's manning the point, Gustafson or Seabrook types. Those would be the guys I'd be looking at squarely for cash games and looking to stack some combination of them for tournaments. I don't really know that I'd be looking for anybody else too much, but their prices are starting to get up there too. San Jose is also a high-priced team, giving up a lot of goals. Calgary's not giving up a ton of goals. They're not really not giving up goals, though. They're not exactly an elite defense, and they're scoring a ton, too. This is another potential shootout, another potential game stack, or another one, San Jose and Chicago, Calgary, Chicago, San Jose, Washington, Calgary, Winnipeg, whatever. Those types of combos work out just fine. Evander Kane has dried up a little bit, and Pavelski and Couture have kicked it in. So those would be the guys I'd be looking at a little bit more in San Jose. And then over on the Calgary side, the usual suspects. Columbus Blue Jackets, scoring a little bit, giving up not much. Arizona's given up a little bit. And they're not really scoring. There's always value on Arizona, though, as a one-off, like your Panics, Hinestrozas, Galchenyuk. Who'd I leave out? Connor, what's his name? Connor Garland. Those types of guys are okay as one-offs. I don't know that I'd stack them together because I'm not seeing a lot of 4, 5, 6 goal games where these guys are, crossing over and everybody's getting points. You kind of got to pick the right one on the right night. But they're pretty cheap, so you can kind of take those gambles if you need the value, and it's not a bad gamble to take. On the Columbus side, you'd be looking at your Panarins, whatever else. Typically, I like line 2 on the road because the home ice or home shift advantage kind of allows the home team to pick who they want to match their shutdown lineup against. So, being that Columbus's line 1 does more of the scoring than line 2, I think that I would probably prefer line 2 tonight if I could find it. But line 1 isn't a terrible way to go in tournaments. I might, look at a Panarin in cash. I might look at some of these other guys like a Suter or somebody in cash, but I'd probably limit it to maybe one because Arizona isn't exactly giving up tons of goals at home. So I'd be a little bit worried about that. And I've already got 7 offenses or 8. Carolina, Winnipeg, Montreal, Vancouver, Chicago, Vancouver only with Chicago, Calgary, San Jose, Columbus. Those are the offenses I'm looking at. Maybe Washington up top are the offenses that I'm looking at for tournament for where my stack is going to come from in this little contest. And then on the other side, my one-offs are going to come out of any of these games. Now, how do I go about finding them? I kick over here into the skater side, and I'm going to scroll over. The first thing I'm going to do when it loads up is click the X off it and make sure these X's are gone, which it looks like they are. That's a good thing. If I come over here, I want to find who's producing right now. And, I may use shots on goal and blocked shots for cash game type scenarios. But quite honestly, I'm really looking a little bit more at, and see, this thing paused on me. I hate when this thing does this. We got to get away from this Excel bullshit. Let me pause the video and I'll come right back and fix it. All right, we're back. Apologize for that, but I went in and sorted by FanDuel average here. Last 5 games. You could do last 10 games if you want a little bit bigger sample. Shots on goal and block shots if you want a floor, something where you're not dependent upon scoring. I don't mind looking at the scoring. Guys have momentum in hockey. They score in bunches, and so I want to catch them when they're scoring in those bunches. So that's kind of how I'm looking at it right now. I sort them from the top to the bottom. Your Taves, your Canes, Draisaitl, Roslovic, he worries me a little bit. Sagan, DeBrincat, Pavelski, Kopitar, these types of guys, I'm looking at in the upper 20s per game over the last 5 games and see how steady they are. If I wanted to, I can go back to Line Start and start searching them up. I'm not going to bore you with that, but I'm looking at these guys, and on such a huge slate, there's a lot of them that are scoring over 20 points per 5 games. It's just going to be a matter of whether or not you get the right ones tonight. Don't put too much expectations on yourself. Just try and do the best you can and hope the luck lands on you. But I'm looking for guys that are out of place price-wise, and I'm going to see it immediately in Roslovic, but I don't know that he's somebody that I trust because he had that big hat trick that kind of came out of nowhere. So that one worries me a bit. But, these guys up here should all be 8s and 9s. So 75 Taves, still a bargain. 75 Draisaitl, still a bargain. 66 DeBrincat, still a bargain. 75 Pavelski, 66 Kopitar. See, those are still bargains because really and truly the McDavids should be up here. But these guys are all out producing McDavid over the last 5 games. And Stamkos. 5,800 Treba, still producing. 6,900 Voracek. Now I'm looking a little bit cheaper. Kind of I want to see in the 5s and the 6s. So Vetrano's in there. Strome is in there. These are your value plays. 6,500 O'Reilly, maybe. Couturier, sorry, maybe. Down a little bit more. 5,900 Giordano, maybe. I like cheaper defenses, so I can always kick on this and then do the same thing. I'm still sorted by the last 5 games. I might look more at the floor in this one with the shots on goal and block shots because defensemen tend to block shots. But again, I'm looking for cheap guys up top. 4,200 Sanheim. Suter, 4,900. 4,500 Ekblad. We've mentioned Florida for one-offs is not in a terrible spot. Let's go look over at Ekblad. Because, see, again, I'm not seeing any real cheap guys. 3,900. There's Theodore. These are the guys that I'd be looking at. So I'm going to look at Theodore and Ekblad over here. And what I want to see is their shot on goal over 10 games being high. I'd prefer to see over 5 games it be more than half. Since it's half the sample size, I'd like to see it be more than half of the total of the 10 game because I want to see them ascending. I want to see them getting hotter. I want to see them heating up. So when I look at Ekblad, I see a 26 shot on goal, 11.9 points, and look at DK if you play DraftKings. And out of that 26, I see a 14, so half. It's pretty steady. It's pretty much right on half. I mean, yeah, technically it's 1 above half, but that's fluky. The 18 over the 11 is a great sign of ascension. So I like Ekblad tonight. He should give me a good shot at bringing some value. I can look over here at the FanDuel last 20 games and see how many times he's hit 5, 10, 15, whatever, 20. And I can start looking at Ekblad here and see that 60% of the time he's only getting, that's not great, right? So he may not have the floor I'm thinking that he has, but maybe he does because his last 5 games are better than his last 10, and this is over his last 20. Theodore, 44 shots on goal and block shots. That's a big number. It's not Brent Burns big, but it's big. 44 is big. 14 points, and he's running it right on the average at 22. So 22 and 44, he's dead on. His 10-game average is 5. That's pretty steady. That tells me his 5-game is really close to his 10-game. Tells me he's not running super hot. It tells me it might be rather sustainable. So I'm going to go back over, check his price. I thought I saw it at 3,900. Boom. No, 4,500. Will Butcher was 3,900. But 4,500 for Theodore is not bad. Ekblad 4,500. It's not bad. I don't like getting above the 5s and 6s too terribly often on big slates because I just want the points and I want to be able to actually get the guys with multi-goal scoring upside, and that's your your forwards and your wingers and your centers and stuff like that. So that's a brief idea of how I'm going to kind of go through there. Another thing that I will be looking at is one of my favorite stats in this entire sheet, which is percentage of team scoring. I'm going to look and see how much scoring these guys are on parts of their team. This is sorted by defenseman. I would go back and uncheck them all and then look at everybody on the team. And you're going to see your McKinnons and your Connor McDavids and whatever jump right to the top. And that tells you they're very cash safe, because if they're in a situation where their team is supposed to score goals tonight, they're going to get pieces of it. And that's what you want for cash games. You don't want zeros. You want big pieces of the scoring when they do happen. So hopefully this helps you out. I'll come back tomorrow, show you the lineup, show you the results, and we'll see. We'll start tallying up which one hits 180 more often. Cash games 130, 135 is pretty good. But I want to see how often it hits how often the non-stacked lineup has the power to win a GPP versus the stack lineup, and see which one routinely scores more points. So that's the experiment we're going to run going forward. And we'll try not to make them 25 minutes, but I had to set this thing up right from the first time. We had 14 games to cover. So if you like the video, like and subscribe. Hit the notifications. If you want more talk, more detailed talk, become a VIP, jump inside, use the link at the bottom there, and use the coupon code CHOP to knock 20% off. Love to talk to you inside. Love to see you. Hey, you know what? Leave me a comment out on YouTube. Let me know you like this. I'll probably respond to you, because that opens dialogue and interactions, what social media is all about. So I'd rather not talk to my computer. I'd rather talk to people. So hit me up, and we will talk to you guys tomorrow with some results. All right. Take care.